After living and dying by window lighting and random lamps in my room for the better part of like 15 years of content, ladies and gentlemen, I decided to take the next step in my career. I bought 2 lights and clamped them to my desk. Now, overhauling my setup took an embarrassingly long amount of time. Reconfirming to myself, I was put on this planet to talk about video games maybe, but definitely not to be an architect, definitely not to be an engineer. I did not get those genes in the Matty bloodline. Now, while I was locking in and trying to figure all this out, Xbox hardware was in complete disarray online. Rumors were spiraling out of control that Xbox was pulling out of the next generation of hardware. One of the other reasons I didn't grab the mic over the weekend was, well, frankly, we posted like 6 videos last week, so kind of want to just give myself and our editor, Dan, a little break. But also, we had the BioWare video, the 76 video. Wanted you all to check those out in the meantime while we waited for these rumors to settle, and we got everything to go through today. Everything from the Xbox hardware rumor down the rabbit hole to what makes it somewhat legitimate into Xbox responding to these rumors. There's 2 things you can take away from this. Number 1, it's pretty bleak for Xbox that these rumors gain traction, saying all that needs to be said about the brand. Number 2, and the bigger talking point, is that despite Xbox denying these rumors, I don't believe you. Sorry. Broken trust is broken trust, man. And I'm not just saying that from the evil corp bad, therefore I believe nothing they say angle that I understand many have adopted and I think is fair with how companies behave nowadays. What I'm talking about, though, is Xbox's behavior over multiple generations, dating back to the Xbox One. But really, what I'm talking about is as far back as last year, when the entire Xbox leadership core sits down and tries to tell me, hey, 4 games are going over to multiple platforms. And that's Sea of Thieves, that's Hi-Fi Rush, that's Grounded, that's Pentiment, and that's it. Anyone with a functioning brain watching that show knew it was not going to be just those 4. That means that Xbox is very comfortable just lying to us whenever it's convenient for them, because just months later, they rip off the Band-Aid and say, hey, Indiana Jones is going to PlayStation 5 before Indiana Jones ever came out exclusively on Xbox. From there, we'd see multiple ports to PlayStation in Forza Horizon 5, Gears of War Reloaded, and many more to come. And many people anticipated Xbox to do this because multiple moves throughout this generation have always suggested that Plan A for Xbox is never actually going to happen. It's always Plan B, C, D. Like, it's always something different with them. It's always an issue. It doesn't go according to plan, and it's because their plans change on the flip of a switch. In turn, it has shattered the trust, but even if trust were a factor here, the ultimate reality is with hardware sales trending downward over like, I think 12 plus quarters for Xbox and the business decisions that they have made, interest in Xbox hardware has never been lower, where if they bowed out of it, I would get it. I wouldn't even be upset at this point. I'd be like, yeah, that's the smart thing to do. I don't want to see them go. I want PlayStation and Nintendo to have more competition, but it's clear that Xbox has set their sights on PC, growing over there. They think that's the future. And if Xbox One's reveal told us anything about Xbox as a brand, Microsoft as a brand, is once they believe something is the future, they commit all their resources, all their talking points to it. Just look at what they're doing with AI right now. They're all in beyond belief. So we're going to go through this rabbit hole of rumors, how it started, how it gained credibility, what Xbox said, where I stand on everything. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into Microsoft gaming, consider subscribing. So this rumor began with Sneakers SO over on Reset Era. Now, this is important to note because this was the individual that actually did start talking about Xbox's multi-platform plans before they were obviously confirmed by Xbox. This gave him a level of credibility, and now he's out on Reset Era basically saying that Xbox is out on the next generation of hardware. So we'll read what he wrote and then get into how it started to gain a little more traction beyond the just general plausibility of the fact that Xbox really has no reason to be in the hardware business anymore. He says that the next round of layoffs is coming in Q1 26, and it should just be as massive as the last one, but that the ramifications of the Call of Duty Game Pass gambit not working out were just starting to get properly measured. But the thing that really stuck out to him was that suddenly, really concrete plans for actual Microsoft hardware went from being definitive to up in the air. Not canceled, by the way, but up in the air, which was really startling given that the thing was meant to be out relatively soon. It was one of those situations where despite folks being told, hey, we want to pull the trigger on this in 2026, the steps you would need to take in the lead up to delivering a new console gen weren't being met. Lots of things that were sure things started to get pushed. The Costco retailer pulling Xbox, and apparently they're one of many that we'll learn about soon, which by the way, we did see how now Sam's Club has pulled out on Xbox. So there's a little something there. To sum it up, the future of Xbox is software publishing with a significantly honed-in focus on profitable IP like Call of Duty, WoW, Minecraft, etc. Cloud gaming being the home of the Xbox platform, transitioning Game Pass into basically becoming the point of entry subscription for xCloud access, which they'll continue to drive the price tag higher, and releasing their software on any device that has a marketplace and users willing to buy their titles. Maybe some OEM thing will take up the Xbox name, but given what is clearly a collapse in favorable mindshare and faith in said brand, I'm not even sure a third-party OEM is going to want to have an Xbox console by the time Microsoft is done reorienting the division. Now, given that, let's be very frank about it, shitting on Xbox tends to be the popular thing nowadays, yeah, a lot of people naturally saw us and went, oh, hey, what's going on here? I believe that one. And so podcasts started talking about it, such as Xbox Era. They sat down with Tom Warren of The Verge, whose story we just covered a few days ago about how Xbox is bringing cloud gaming into a free tier that was going to have advertisements in it. So they were chatting a bit about what was going on with Xbox, and they started to laugh off this rumor a bit before Tom Warren said that Sneakers SO actually has an idea of what's going on internally at Xbox as he has seen. And I mean this with no disrespect to the Xbox Era boys, but the way the conversation went from haha to you're serious is a perfect indication of where the Xbox fandom is at now. Like, surely it can't get worse than that. You're telling me it's going to get worse? Tom Warren hasn't said much about it since, but that was enough to give it the kind of grain of salt credibility marker to it, where it's like, okay, random Reset Era user who did get something right before that was pretty drastic and unbelievable but ended up being true is now having someone like Tom Warren, who's been on the inside of Xbox reporting many times in the past, is now saying like, yeah, he has an idea. As these rumors grew from Saturday into Sunday, Microsoft had to get in front of it. But that was after Jez Corden posted this article on Windows Central Gaming saying Microsoft confirms Xbox hardware plans are still on track. Here's why rumors are false. So this is an updated piece from what he originally wrote, but it says, I've asked multiple trusted sources, many of whom spoke to me on the above devices, which are things like Project Kennen, series consoles, and so on, which previously turned out to be true about what Xbox's present hardware posture is. And with Microsoft's confirmation, there's no reason to think anything is changing. To which Microsoft submitted a statement saying Microsoft has provided the following statement, echoing our previous report, quote, we are actively investing in our future first-party consoles and devices designed, engineered, and built by Xbox. For more details, the community can revisit our agreement announcement with AMD. We'll talk about in a separate rumor in a moment here from an AMD leaker how Xbox just might be contractually obligated to get these consoles out. But before we get into that, let's just talk about really the state of Xbox consoles, right? The reason people are willing to believe these rumors over what Microsoft is telling you is beyond the broken trust. It's just the reality that Xbox hardware no longer has value. That's indicated statistically if you just want to look at the constant hardware decline in revenue for Xbox as they do their quarterly earnings reports at Microsoft. It's constant. It's always hardware down. Even when software is up, it's usually thanks to Activision Blizzard King, but the Xbox business is kind of running itself into the ground. Hardware is not growing, and we know companies like Microsoft like to chase growth endlessly. Why is hardware down? It's because, I mean, really it started to spiral big time when Xbox pulled out on exclusives. And what we've seen with the change in Game Pass is that they've lost so much money on that Xbox is trying to retrain their users to buy more games. Xbox users play a lot of games, let's be clear about that. But thanks to Game Pass, they float from game to game because there is a plethora to kind of window shop through over there. But in the terms of financial commitments, we're starting to see stats pop up that are indicating less and less spending. And I imagine a lot of what's happening with Microsoft is incentivized by, hey, look, people are actually buying our software. It's just not always on our platform. But when we bring Forza Horizon 5 over to PlayStation 5, it ends up being the best-selling PlayStation game of the year. Huh, interesting. Mind you, I'm going off of stats pre-Ghost of Yotei. We don't know where it's going to end up now, but being even in the top 5 for PlayStation, pretty great spot to be if you're Xbox, especially when you're beating out the likes of like Monster Hunter this year, which sold 10 million copies on its own in like its first month. So it's like Xbox's strategy of like Game Pass, making them competitive and trying to circumvent the competition has brought them full circle back to the point of like, hey, to make our business function, we need people to buy our games more. And so we're going to gouge the fans who are going to remain in Game Pass. We're going to jack up the price so much that even if we lose millions of subscribers because the price is so higher, those who are paying are going to cover that difference, cover that spread. And so they just make a lot of money off of this. And I think that's why they have not walked back their Game Pass plans. But all this is to say that you have butchered a service that was a big selling point for your platform. You have now tried to jack up your prices on your video games and failed. And I imagine, given how you've approached hardware, you're done subsidizing costs, which means that you're not going to be very competitive in the pricing point of your next system. Like, I could totally see a world where we have another PS3 360 scenario where Xbox is like telling you to get a second job to go buy your next Xbox. Like, I could see a world where it gets that crazy. But point blank, it lacks value. It lacks value now. Exclusives create value. Services create value. When you bottleneck all of your great features, cloud gaming, Microsoft rewards, into one singular service to try and artificially jack up the price and be like, we're giving you more, and try to get this positive sentiment behind it, you've stripped the brand of everything that created value for it. And it's so funny to me because Xbox has like 30 plus million users on their consoles. Like, they have a large console base. The fact that there's a world where to a company like this, that isn't enough and that it might just be worth shutting it all down is crazy to think about. But how does this get carried a step further? Well, Kepler L2 steps in, who is a AMD leaker, and was talking a bit about why Xbox pulled out on some of their hardware plans for a dedicated handheld this year, which was originally reported. He said AMD needs to justify their commitment to R&D, which is why contracts were signed on how many chips they want, even if they're not ready yet. But he says, as far as I know, the handheld was canceled because AMD wanted a commitment of 10 million plus units to justify making a dedicated SoC. But with Steam Deck only selling approximately 5 million units and Asus ROG/Lenovo Legion only selling 1 to 2 million, Microsoft did not want to take the risk. Jez Corden has stepped out and said that this isn't even slightly true, by the way. So it's just a flat out denial. No real reason as to exactly why Xbox backed out on the dedicated handheld this year, other than, I imagine, based on what we have read before, was to synchronize this with a kind of PC launch that will likely be much more expensive. Because again, if Xbox is done subsidizing the cost of hardware, I feel like you need to have some sort of Series S-like option that creates a price proposition where it's like, if you want to get into the Xbox hardware ecosystem for cheap, instead of paying $1,400 for your console PC hybrid that's going to sit in your living room, pay $600 for the handheld. I imagine that's why PlayStation's doing a similar thing, though. I think given that PlayStation drives a lot of the Sony business, PlayStation's pricing will be a lot more competitive compared to Xbox, because PlayStation runs a more, I guess, traditional gaming business of lose money on the hardware and make a lot of money on exclusive software. What this all reminded me of, though, I found this interesting piece here from a patron over on Last Stand Media, was the Dreamcast, of course. Not just because Sega famously pulled out of the hardware business after the Dreamcast and moved into just putting their games onto other platforms, but also this article here called The Death of Dreamcast in Press Releases. And in this article, it's all press releases from what Sega was saying as they were transitioning to like multi-platform and all that stuff. And it's eerily similar to Xbox. Like, here's a new statement that they're trying to return the company to profit. And they said Sega's in negotiation regarding the supply of our software to other gaming units, including PlayStation 2 and Game Boy Advance. You also see here that they're starting to work with like other companies to integrate Dreamcast technology into like other technology on the market. So it reminded me a little bit of like Xbox Ally. So the Dreamcast vibes are totally real here. And I just feel it makes a lot of sense for Xbox to go full third-party publisher. I don't want them to be out of the hardware business, but to get into the hardware business, you have to offer things that are compelling, that are not overpriced. When PlayStation, outside of day one games, is offering, I think, an equally, if not more compelling subscription service now. Like, I'm not going to PlayStation for PS Plus. That's like a bonus to me. I'm going to PlayStation because they have great exclusives. Same thing with Nintendo, but the subscription's a bonus. With Xbox, the subscription really drove a lot of the positivity around the brand. When you devalue and break that all down, now you're left with nothing. And at a certain point, it doesn't even matter if your games are great, which I imagine this could be an even messier month. We have Outer Worlds 2 coming out this month, which the public reception for it has not been fantastic. You also have the rumored Halo Combat Evolved remake reveal coming this month. And I have to say, and I don't want to get too doomer with it, but it would be the real icing on the cake if Combat Evolved remake just didn't pan out well. Just after everything that's happened, Halo being bad again would just be like there it is in a nutshell. I hope it isn't. Combat Evolved is actually like my favorite in the series. I have just so many memories with that one as a kid. But we'll see. We'll be all over it. No doubt this will be a month chock full of Xbox stuff. But hey, at least we got Ninja Gaiden 4 to look forward to. That's one that Xbox is doing that I'll always be like, thank you. Thank you. More of this, please. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave you with this. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting so much where we can actually buy these lights. Elgato, they're not cheap, but it took me a while to muster up the will to be like, okay, credit card, here you go. But appreciate you all being here so we can gradually upgrade and all that stuff. So just thank you so much. And with that, take excellent care of yourselves. We'll see you in the next one. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.